Welcome to another episode of 2D10. This week, we're doing something a little different on the channel. I want to chat with you about the World of Darkness and what I think of the current state of the brand. More than any other video I've made previously, this one is solely my opinion. I don't work for any company related to the product, I have no insider knowledge, and I'm not interested in convincing you that I'm right, or that you should change your opinion about what you enjoy or don't enjoy. This channel is my platform to express how I see things based on my experience and decades of fandom. If you're ready for my World of Darkness rant, roll 2d10. Before I get started, I'll give you my credentials, so to speak, or lack thereof. I've never worked for any company related to the World of Darkness brand, Paradox Interactive, White Wolf, etc. I'm not a business expert, I'm not a game developer, I don't work in marketing. I started playing Vampire the Masquerade in 1994, a few years after the launch of the second edition. I was utterly captivated by the game's presentation, both in artwork and visual style, as well as gameplay. I was 13 years old when I read the book for the first time, and it blew me away. I played a bunch of different fantasy RPGs with my friends, like D&D, where your group was always the heroes, or the good guys for lack of a better term. But Vampire presented something different from sword and sorcery, fantasy elements typical of the games that I'd played. Plus, it was gothy and punky in all the ways that a young suburban kid like me found compelling. For the next couple of years, I tried to get my gaming group to play Vampire the Masquerade to varying degrees of success, but it just didn't seem to resonate with them as it did with me. A few years later, I got a summer job a few towns over. Most of my coworkers were my age, and for lack of a better term, they were freaks and outcasts like me. There were lots of combat boots and spiked bracelets and multicolored haircuts at this business. Let's just put it that way. And no, it wasn't a hot topic. Anyway, during our breaks, a group of folks would huddle around playing rock, paper, scissors. They'd always be saying things like, take an egg, or you go to Torpor. While their actions were peculiar, their language was oddly familiar. I mean, I've heard the word Bruja before, but why are they slapping hands over in the corner? Long story short, I asked them what they were doing and found out that they were playing Vampire, but with live action rules? I'd never heard of such a thing. And like that, I was hooked. In towns all around where I lived, these live action games were taking place every night of the week. Games that ran on Friday or Saturday night sometimes drew in 70 or more people each week. You could easily find over 100 active players wandering around a park at the game's peak. I was introduced to a whole new community of people from every walk of life. Young people and older adults, kids and their parents, rich kids and people from working class families like mine. I made tons of new friends while LARPing, and I learned a lot about people very different from me. And since those first LARP experiences in my late teens, most of my friendships have resulted from World of Darkness gaming. My marriage, my jobs, and a great deal of my ability to interact with people have all spawned from this game and mutual appreciation for the fictional world. So, yeah, it means a lot to me. In 2016, I started a podcast called 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade with the sole purpose of reviewing the classic Masquerade books in order of release. So I went back to basics and I read every Vampire and Vampire Dark Ages source book. I've recorded thousands of hours of audio reviews on these books, exploring them all in depth. That's not meant as a brag, it's just a fact. Those are my credentials. They don't make my opinions more right or wrong than anyone else's. I've presented them so we can skip all the post-script debates. Now let's get down to it. For some background, White Wolf, the original publisher of the World of Darkness IP, is not the subject of this video, at least not in its original incarnation. CCP purchased that company in 2006. White Wolf and all its intellectual properties was purchased by Paradox in 2015. As a result, a new White Wolf formed as a subsidiary of Paradox with an entirely new team of people. In 2018, a new edition of Vampire the Masquerade was launched. My initial review was positive, although I have to say when I first read the V5 core book, I was enamored by the material. Some changes to the system and a refocus on thin blood vampires were a bit of a turnoff, but I'd have graded V5 as a solid B+, which is way better than I've ever done in school. And then I played the game, and I played it more. and I found that many of the rules changes I'd initially been fond of in theory dramatically failed in practice. Minor tweaks to establish lore or slight deviations from earlier editions were annoying, but not enough to do more than slightly ruffle my feathers. Then more books came out, like the Camarilla and the Anarch books. While the source books were physically attractive, they offered very little in actual game content. The Anarch book angered many people for some very good reasons. I'm not going to rehash that here, just Google it if you're unfamiliar. After the Anarch book came out, a constant barrage of negative attention followed, and by 2019, White Wolf was reabsorbed into Paradox because of the continuous missteps and blunders. At the same time, White Wolf's distributor, Modifius, took over development and content creation for the World of Darkness IP. Their sole contribution to the line is the dramatically awful Fall of London. Meanwhile, Onyx Path Publishing, makers of licensed World of Darkness content since 2012, continued developing material for V5. At this point, fans like myself are basically buying books for two different games. On the one hand, you have the White Wolf / Modifius books that present as glorified goth coffee table books, playing fast and loose with the lore, dressed up with modern altered photos, and reusing nearly a decade of MMO assets that never came to fruition. On the other hand, you have the Onyx Path material, more like a continuation from V20 with actual artwork in place of photos, and more consistent with established lore. The Onyx Path Publishing books seem incidentally V5. During this grand journey, White Wolf ceased to be a thing. Now, the subsidiary of Paradox was simply called World of Darkness. In November of 2020, World of Darkness announced a new partnership with Renegade Game Studios to publish their catalog. Additionally, game development would once again be in-house. To prove how awesome this would be, World of Darkness released a free Vampire the Masquerade companion, a free digital supplement that brings new playable clans to Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. New. You know, those new clans that were initially introduced in the 90s. Way to go, World of Darkness. Onyx Path Publishing would finish up their current agreement, and who knows what was on the docket for the future. The other big announcement to come out of this media scrum was the return of Justin Achille, developer for Revised Edition and V20. Personally, I was pleased about this. I've always respected Justin and his work. I was cautiously optimistic that this would put V5 back into a cohesive direction. I was wrong. So, if you're not thoroughly confused by now, I congratulate you. As a creator trying to follow the game since 2018, it's been dizzying. That said, the behind-the-scenes publishing foibles of the game for the last 4 years are a minor complaint that certainly doesn't warrant a video rant. On top of the relatively constant changes of developers, partners, book announcements, cancellations, apologies, and backtracking, Paradox shows very little discrimination when handing out its license agreements. In the video game arena, Werewolf the Apocalypse and Vampire the Masquerade have had a slew of average to subpar games and visual novels like Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood, Vampire the Masquerade Out for Blood, and the perplexing battle royale game nobody asked for, Bloodhunt. These licensed games and interactive fiction titles serve to dilute the brand further, likely pushing away fans drawn back to the product after the announcement of Bloodlines 2, which hasn't been mentioned by Paradox since November of 2021. Notably, World of Darkness brand leaders have emphatically stated that none of these other games have taken away from Bloodlines 2 development. And while that's great, they've certainly muddled the brand's quality. Thankfully for you and all your disposable income, you can buy a heap of officially licensed and costly gaming gear. Need a storyteller screen? Why not pick one up for $400? How about some special aluminum dice with the unique V5 blood dice sigils on them? It's a steal at 15 bucks a piece for each D10. Need an extra box to roll those dice? No problem. 130 bucks is cheap, ain't it? And while it should go without saying, I'm not mad at any company that wants to sell accessories to their fan base. On the contrary, I'm a big fan of accessories and paraphernalia. Just look behind me. But holy shit, $15 for a single dice you can only use in one game? But what price can you put on quality? Oh, how about a reprint of the original Book of Nod for only $50? Wait, it's the V5 Book of Nod. Isn't there some new material in it to update the setting or something? No. Why? Because you, that's why. Faux leather and silver foil are quality, not quantity. Stupid. You can follow this line of thinking to the most current book released by World of Darkness, Sabbat, the Black Hand. The quality over quantity talking point is constantly bandied about by the same people who put their names on a 140-page book with no player character content and no playable rules and charged $45 for a physical copy, or $31.50 for a PDF. Meanwhile, Chicago by Night for V5 has over 350 pages, details the history of the city, updates the setting, characters, and the metaplot to the current day, includes a whole clan for play and a complete story, and costs $50 for a hardcover and $19.99 for a PDF. Quality is subjective. I know. What you find worth your money is your business. It's not up to me to decide how you spend your disposable income. But let's remember, the product the World of Darkness should be selling is the World of Darkness. The World of Darkness is a game setting with a long-established metaplot. This overarching storyline binds together the official continuity of the game, from Cain's terrible act of murder to the rumors of Gehenna. This metaplot is the World of Darkness product. Now, it's impossible to continue the story of World of Darkness without ignoring large portions of the established metaplot. After all, the story was concluded at the end of the revised edition cycle, so Gehenna, Apocalypse, etc. wrapped the entire World of Darkness game up in a nice little bow. When you unravel that bow, things are bound to get a little messy, and I think that's okay. Fans demanded a return to the World of Darkness, the world that they'd grown to love over decades of releases, or because they played a delightfully dark video game called Bloodlines. But with each subsequent V5 release, the creative team at World of Darkness has taken more and more liberties with the established lore of the game. One creative director has stated that metaplot doesn't matter, or worse, is prohibitive to new players looking to get into the game for the first time. But that narrative is as meaningless as it is false. The idea being propagated time and time again is that lore and shelves of green marble are to blame for virtually every ill that's befallen the World of Darkness. The decline in sales of the original material, the unwillingness of new people to give the game a chance, the faltering popularity of the setting, in general, all lead back to the idea that too much lore is a cancer eating away at the World of Darkness. First, lore is not a gatekeeper. Especially when you're talking about tabletop role-playing games, lore is the entire reason to explore fantastic worlds. Lore captivates imaginations. Metaplot provides a foundation upon which players build their plots and stories. People are the gatekeepers. People use their perceived position of power, advanced knowledge, or social superiority to keep new fans
away
and push away current fans. Lore is just bricks and mortar for your game. The decline in sales of the original material had as much to do with quantity over quality for sure, but not from a word count perspective. You only need to look at the revised edition publication list to see how out of hand things got at the height of White Wolf's popularity. Between 1998 and 2004, White Wolf published nearly 50 books for Vampire the Masquerade alone. That's practically one book a month for 5 years. And that doesn't even consider the other titles in the line like Werewolf the Apocalypse or Mage the Ascension, which was pushing out new material at a record pace. White Wolf launched Hunter the Reckoning and Demon the Fallen during the same period. White Wolf published over 30 books in a 3-year cycle just between these two game lines alone. Even if every one of these source books was a masterpiece of dark fantasy, which they weren't, no company should expect a fan to be that dedicated to a product. It's utterly baffling to me that a publishing company couldn't see how that level of output might be troublesome for the bottom line. To me, when you spell it all out like this, the solution is so obvious. Write fewer books that are more meaningful to your world and your fans, both in content and in quantity. A 300-page city book written with care that includes tons of content relating to running a game in that city? Yes, please. A 140-page sect book with no information about how to actually play that sect, filled with redundant, contradictory material that's poorly edited and disregards 30 years of established history with a $45 cover price? No thank you. Rendering the World of Darkness down to its base ingredients and genericizing the product is counterintuitive to resurrecting the line in the first place. Disregarding the established metaplot and rewriting the history without giving even the most rudimentary story reasons is profoundly stupefying. This rewrite of Vampire the Masquerade was attempted once before, and it's called Requiem. It's not a bad game, not by any means, but it's not Vampire the Masquerade, and it's not the World of Darkness. And all this plot, meta, canon bullshit could have easily been avoided by calling V5 what it actually is, a World of Darkness reboot. Personally, I would have been just fine with White Wolf calling it a reboot. There's tons of reasons to start fresh and rewrite the world from the ground up, each more valid than the next. Instead, Paradox and their creative team would rather piss on your head and tell you it's raining. The real issue, the cherry on top of the V5 shit sundae, is how some folks associated with the World of Darkness treat fans with dissenting voices in the community. A great example of this behavior is when players express their discontent about the V5 Sabbat book. Renegade's first all-new sourcebook for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition arrives this August. Sabbat, the Black Hand, includes everything you need to include the Sabbat as antagonists in your game. But the problem was many players were expecting to be able to play the Sabbat in their games and not just use them as antagonists. When some fans expressed their discontent with this, the World of Darkness community developer told one fan what V5 is. Essentially, if you can't make your otherworldly power monster fantasy work with the rules provided, another edition would be a better option. So the implication is that V5 is a kinder, gentler version of Vampire wherein you should only play morally confused, emo vampires struggling to do the right thing and never those rascally evil Sabbat baddies. What the actual This stupefying interaction from a World of Darkness spokesperson is utterly hypocritical when you consider the very existence of Bloodhunt. In this battle arena game, you leap from rooftop to rooftop, snipe your enemies, and diablerize them for cash and prizes. It's the exact opposite of the supposed back-to-basics, emotionally engaging, story-centric gameplay of V5. But because it's a licensed product riding the wave of video game trends, it's acceptable. But don't you dare play Sabbat in your tabletop, you plop fizz. Oh, and one last thing about the Sabbat book, and the whole reason I made this video. So, get this. World of Darkness launched their Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition content for Storyteller's Vault on October 15th, 2021, allowing community creators like you and I to make their supplements for the edition. And then, on October 27th, the Sabbat Black Hand book officially launched. Shortly after that, one of the actual writers on the official Sabbat book announced he would release another Sabbat book on the Storyteller's Vault to make them playable in V5. Yes, this book is written by this guy who wrote on this book. His fan-made version launched on January 31st, 3 months after the publication of the official V5 Sabbat book. And guess what? This new version of the book that makes the Sabbat playable, $25 for a digital copy. And I'm sitting here thinking, what kind of company allows a contributing author to turn around and make a community content version of the book he was just paid to work on? But then it becomes oh so clear. A company with no faith in their product and no respect for their fans that scooped up a potentially valuable IP to make some quick cash, but are completely hamstrung out of fear of potentially offending anyone, would allow it. V5 product sales information are not available to the general public. In fact, no sales figures for any of the 30 years worth of books are public record that I'm aware of. But to say people are more engaged with your product than ever before is willful self-deception. Yes, more people are engaged via the internet through streaming and digital media today than ever before. Furthermore, more people are on the internet in 2020 than in 1998. Wow, way to go figuring that out. Players change. Products change as well. But pushing away long-term fans over and over again by compromising your product can't be good for business, right? Who do you think has the money to buy your $50 books and your $150 dice? Broke-ass millennials who have so much student debt they can't afford to own a home? Gen Z folks who are entering the workforce during the worst state of inflation since the 1970s? Oh, and by the way, both of these groups of consumers are used to getting their shit online for free. And so you see, Paradox doesn't have to satisfy longtime fans with V5 because the money isn't in selling books or stories. A well-off Gen Xer hungry for nostalgia who purchases a $400 storyteller screen is just a drop in the bucket compared to the money to be made from in-game purchases and selling player data to online advertisers. So stop with the bullshit, World of Darkness. Yes, players change, but more importantly, consumers change. The current iteration of the World of Darkness isn't for me. No number of videos filled with angry, impotent rants are going to change that. I've spent a great deal of money and time on V5 and I don't regret it. Some of the material is very good in my opinion. However, I must face facts as they are. What's currently for sale is an entirely different game, and I'm not willing to spend any more of my money on it. I still love the World of Darkness, and I still collect those old books, but until something drastic happens with the current brand, I'm not interested in supporting it with my time and money. Thanks for watching. I know this video was a long, angry rant about things that truly don't matter, but it's my channel, and these are my feelings about things that, well, kind of matter to me. I hope you enjoyed it, and if some of the things I said resonate with you, that's cool. If you disagree with me and think V5 is the best game ever made, that's cool too. Let me know in the comments. See you next week with some more actual relevant gaming content.